topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good evening, listeners. So excited to be with you. It's Monday evening, and I want to share something wonderful that happened last weekend. It was a speaking engagement that I was speaking at, and it was phenomenal. It was in person, and there's just something to be said. When you're in person, the energy in the auditorium and that human-to-human connection, it's so priceless. So take a moment to connect with someone and reach out. And there are so many things that you can do. Go out for a walk, or even if you're hesitant to go indoors, you can sit out and have a lunch with one of your friends. So make sure to rekindle that connection. So wanted to share my experience with y'all. And thank you for getting our books. If you have not got the books yet, please do get either The Entrepreneur's Garden or Expert to Influencer, because the profits, some of it, are going to help entrepreneurs impacted by COVID-19. And thank you for everything that y'all do for other people, because it's so important. We take that 1 hour of our time. Yes. And that could be connecting with one of your old friends or helping somebody out. Make sure to give that 1 hour of time. So let's invite our guest now. Welcome, Lindy.
Hello, Divya. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to have you.
Wise words you just said. It's that human connection. There's just nothing quite like it.
It sure is not. So I would invite you to share a bit about yourself.
Well, so Lindy Lewis is my name, and I've written 3 books now. It started probably in about 2015 when life sort of blew up. I was living that perfect on paper life, as I call it. And actually, might have even been earlier. The first book was done in 2015. And I always in my mind saw that it was a 3-book series. But life just blew up. Everything, that you're supposed to do, every milestone, the way the Western kind of culture sort of sets you up to have this perfect on paper life that you're achieving. And for me, it was a perfect environment, because that I was completely defined by the external, everything external around, from getting the kids up and making sure we're in the right schools, making sure that, I had the job and I was able to manage everything and lead a balanced life and make sure I could get home and read the kids' stories and put them to bed and just everything. And then life blew up and I was diagnosed, shortly, first, of course, a divorce, which in my, the first book, it's called The Recovering Alpha Female, but I was going to call it Go With Your Gut, because I think I knew that there was something off in our marriage. Didn't know what it was, but we just were not syncing. And I ended up, going through a pretty difficult divorce, and
Mm.
then validated a lot of my knowing. And shortly thereafter, I got multiple sclerosis. So I was kind of laid
Oh my
out
goodness.
pretty flat, and raising three babies. I had three babies at the time. They were two,
Yeah,
5, and 7.
life happens. So when you say divorce,
Yeah,
y-
yeah. And left raising the three little ones.
yeah.
So yeah, the life just kind of the way I had dreamt it as a child. I think sometimes we have this amazing, vision for our life, and we hold it and we measure it next to, we compare it to the different, you know, at that time it wasn't Facebook for me, but just the different lives that I wanted to were my role models. And
Right.
I think the thing that I had really no understanding of is that I had so much. Um, Ability to create my own life and to color up my own world, and it doesn't have to look like anybody else's. I can just be free.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So you have had a life with a lot of curveballs and tough times and turbulences. So let's take it back to childhood. Do you have somebody that you remember who was really present in your life or who left a remarkable impression on you?
uh, wow, I think there were several people. Of course, I had
Hmm.
wonderful parents. I was one of those very lucky young people that had very involved, very active, very driven parents. And so they were incredibly inspirational, and holding me accountable. And then I had some teachers along the way that just would give me that encouragement, or sort of hold that space for me to not necessarily know what I was doing. I had a European family that was very influential in my life growing up. They were Germans, and they happened to live out here. And I really, there was an entrepreneurial flavor to the family, but also very creative. And I just, and the mother, she was just a beautiful soul. And so I would always hold her as sort of an inspiration of how I might want to be once I became a, older woman.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, as you are getting influenced by different people in your lives, and we do get influenced by so many different, and it's amazing sometimes you'll just be standing in a shop and somebody is very nice to you and you remember that for the rest of your
Mhm.
life. So, for example, I remember it was one of the custodians in our school, and he would greet everyone with a smile.
Right.
It was just amazing. Didn't matter who it was. And you'll be surprised that, along with few teachers that left a mark on me, I remember him to this day because
Isn't that true?
it's that kindness and it's that little gesture.
What I like about what you're saying is, we never know when we'll be that inspiration for someone else.
Hmm.
All the more reason to live that life of authenticity, integrity, and empathy, really.
You said it, absolutely. So, during your childhood, do you remember like any of the moments like, oh my goodness, it was so much fun, or something changed that left a mark?
I think that the thing that I really appreciated from childhood is we sort of had a family mantra that was, work hard, play hard. And we would, as kids, we get up, we were raised on a farm, a tree farm. So we'd have to do a lot of physical labor, and haying and bucking bales and all of those interesting, things that would keep the farm going. But we'd work, and in that I'd work with my siblings, so it was just like our siblings, and the parents were, running the machines or whatever, or we were making applesauce together as a family or whatever it was. But those were pretty pivotal things for me, for sure, as a child, is that we would work really hard. We would make a lot of our own food. Kind of what's happening, we're having a little bit of a resurgence of that now, going back to the earth for some of that. But we were doing it literally out of financial reasons. I mean, we needed to utilize the abundance of nature just to sustain our lifestyle and to build our life up, and come sort of to the next layer. So I think that was, but then we would always play. We have a lake, and we would go and swim, or we would collect mud. I mean, whatever it was, it was rather simple. We were outside all the time, so I think that was a
Oh,
huge blessing.
Yes. And so many times what happens is that, especially with the pandemic, and well, the pandemic has kind of pushed us outdoors quite a bit. But even then, so,
Well,
especially
yes and
during,
no. It's pushed us
yeah,
indoors too.
yeah, it has pushed indoors as well. And that said, when you talked about tree farm,
Mhm.
was it Christmas trees?
No, no, it was really just this relationship with the land, a steward of the land.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes, on in a forest, you'll have like we have root rot, a severe case of root rot, and so it was
Mm,
hitting all the fir trees, and so we would have to go and take all of the firs out, cut them up for firewood. We sold the firewood as kids so that we could kind of fund our fun hobbies, whatever they were at the time, whether it was, a new water ski or a little tiny, car that you could drive around with a remote control at that time. But so and then we would plant and introduce species that might do better in the area. So that was sort of the idea behind this particular tree farm, was to just try to better the forest.
mm-hmm. Wow, it's such a wonderful concept. So, what did you take away from that?
Again, aside from the work ethic, I mean, there's a huge work ethic. And I'm sure that's why, again, my book is a recovering alpha female. And I
Yeah,
talk about this alphaholic nature.
right.
It's that because you're constantly going, your whole value is tied up in how much you can get done. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I really, really appreciate the work ethic that was instilled in me. And truly the love of nature. I mean, I think, I sort of blew through that pretty quick because I saw that once I started really uh, performing and maybe doing a little better at certain things, whether it was a job or excelling at at a race of some sort, whatever I was doing, or working with the horses, I think it was, I sort of blew through how much I was connected to nature as a child. And I kind of just went straight into that, that doing, shifted right into that gear, right up into fifth gear. And I
Absolutely.
didn't look back until the body and life sort of blew up.
Right, right. So now, when you talk about being an alpha female, tell us, like, what were your interests as you were growing up, and what profession did you go into?
So my interests growing up were really sports. I did all kinds of sports. I was a ski racer. We snowmobiled. I also competitively did water skiing. There were a lot of those fun, just athletic activities that I did. Of course, track and volleyball and all those things I did in high school. And then so those were really great because I could always, and I was a good student, so I could always measure my success because of grades. There were awards, there was, applause, and all of these things. Um, and so I think those were some of the things that really drove me, and then to just kind of create my, my fairy tale life. That's what I started out to do.
So, when you talk about your fairy tale life, how did you picture it to be before, and then after?
I think, one of the things we do to kids, I even write about it in book one. I talk about actually forget the fairy tale because we're so conditioned to think that there is a fairy tale, that you meet Prince Charming and he takes you away and you fall madly in love and you raise a beautiful little family and you live in a castle. And there's just, I mean, every little
Right.
fairy tale does that to the young woman. And
Mm-hmm.
and so that's, I mean, if you're looking, I mean, I think I was geared up to do that. I went to college. I was sort of looking for the right man in college. Of course, found him, and we did life together for about 15 or 16 years, which was great. But again, it was like I'm circling back to the initial comment. That gut instinct. There was something that was off even in the very beginning. I'm saying I do when I had feelings of I don't.
Right.
But I
So,
still went ahead and did it because it was part of that fairy tale that I had dreamt in.
mm-hmm. So it was the part of the package about, okay, you get a good job, you get good education, get a good job, get that house with picket fence, a husband, and
There you
2.5 kids, 2 kids and a dog.
go. Hmm.
So during that lifetime, you said, in your 15 to 16 years of being married and, so to speak, living this fairy tale life, or that supposedly is a fairy tale life, what was, or what were like not just one but couple of things that caught you by surprise?
Wow, that's a good question. I think what surprised me is I don't want to say how much work it was, but it was work to keep it um, looking externally the right way, if that makes sense. Did I articulate that right? Okay, so
Expand a little bit more on that.
okay, I'll give it a go. You can ask some questions in here that we'll flush it out together here. But I think again, you have this image, and whatever those inspirations or those people along the way that have had these perfect lives, what it's supposed to look at. I think to try to keep up that, I don't want to use facade because facade feels too fake. It really wasn't fake, but there's work to maintaining this fairy tale. And
Mm-hmm.
rather than letting it sort of unfold, there was no grace, there was no softness in just saying, oh, well, that's what's happening. I'll just go over here. I'll just kind of, in book 2, I talk about fluidity, not rigidity. I think I was pretty rigid in maybe how everything was supposed to look, and the way I should raise my kids, or the way I should, the guy I
Mm-hmm.
should marry, all of those things. And so I really dismissed my own I guess my own intuition. I mean, I went with the kind of the right way.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's almost sounds like, as they say, keeping up with the Joneses, even though you may not have the money or you don't want to do it. But oh gosh, they're going on picnics. They are
Yeah,
doing a camping trip, or they're putting their kids for travel
yeah, and
sports. We got to do it too.
I
And
know, or yeah,
yeah,
I've got to push them, and they don't like soccer, but
right.
here
No.
maybe they wanted to explore uh,
Mm-hmm.
archery or whatever it was, and I'm like, well, weird, it was for me. So, like I say, I feel like what surprised me is it was a little bit of work to try to keep those wheels on
Mm-hmm.
that bus, rather than just the softening. And now, our marriage blew up, and I will own my part in it for sure. But there was just an that we were just a mismatched pair from the beginning. Honestly, that's just the
Right.
easiest
So
way to say it.
you mentioned something about that I did meet the right guy. And at the same token, in the same breath, you mentioned about having that intuition. So there are so many young girls. And what's surprising is that I coach, because as a mental health coach and executive coach, I have the fortune and honor to coach women and men. And it's so interesting to see that young girls or women in 30s, or even if they're in 40s, it's like if within a couple of years, the next thought is of marriage. Whereas for guys, it's like, I am not sure. So there is that disparity and disconnect. So as you have lived your life through it, what would you say to those
I,
young
I,
women?
I'm glad you asked, because I like to talk with young people, because I want
Hmm.
to encourage them to, you know, take time to get to know themselves, know what will make you a better partner to someone. And that will all unfold as you spend time with yourself, knowing your own interests, your own hobbies, not trying to compare. And one of the books I talk about, in fact, it's book 2, I talk about the comparative narrative, and where we're so caught up in that comparative narrative, we really miss our mark and our highest essential creative self. And we are all here with a very unique, special imprint and purpose. And I really like these young people. In fact, I have a business as well, where I work with a lot of young individuals and encourage them to trust themselves, and at all costs don't feel like, if your body is saying, or something in you is saying no, just say it's not no forever. It's just not now. It's just no, not
Mhm.
now. It's just not now. And I really try to emphasize that there's time. And there isn't necessarily a soulmate out there. I think soulmates can show up in any form. They can be a wonderful, beautiful friend, uh, either sex. It makes no difference. But I think sometimes we're kind of looking for love at that young age. And I was no different. I was that, achieving alpha, looking for the career, the marriage, the White House on the Hill, and the picket fence, and the 2.5 kids. And um, it's just a lot of pressure. And what bothers me about the pressure is it's this sort of containment, and you're not truly able to express. And the reason I wrote the books, the reason I work with young people and alpha females, is because the you know they're in that containment and in that sort of stuffing of the guide inside. We Disease forms, and I am certain that is how MS came to fruition in my body, because I kept kind of pushing all those sort of things away. Now there's a difference between sort of navigating those thoughts versus actually stuffing them, and like a hard, I don't want to talk about them, I don't want to know my knowing. And I think that is when you do that, there's no pressure release for the system, and our system needs that release.
Absolutely. You
And
talked
honesty. We
about,
need to be honest with ourselves.
yeah, absolutely. It's important to be honest with ourselves. And you talked about that pressure release and containment. So if you were to explore, where do you think the pressure was coming from?
Oh, myself.
Hmm.
100%. I have a very loving family. Yes, we were conditioned to push through, and we are right now. We are doing that as a world to our students, these young students, like the right college, the right grades, the higher bed. Like it's no longer a 4 point. It's 4.2, 4.8, 4 point whatever, even to get into the right college. I mean, that conversation is happening every day, all the time. And my concern with that is, these young people are going to run the country when I'm old and gray, and I want them true to themselves, and I want them good to themselves, because when you're good to yourself, you're good to others. And I think that that's the thing, that pressure we talk about, that you talked about, the pressure, it came mostly from myself, and there was no acceptance for myself and where I was at that point in my life, until life just completely blew up for me.
Yeah, for you it had to be something drastic to recognize it. And there are so many young ones, or it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what age you're in, pain is pain. Age has
Yeah.
got nothing to do with it. It is about everyone's pain is their pain.
And it's real. Those
It is
feelings,
real. We all
we don't
feel
need
the
to talk
pain.
ourselves out of them.
Exactly.
They're very much there.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's where you can lean on a soulmate or something, where they can kind of support you through that process and help you rebuild that trust for yourself.
Yes. And what happens is, we are talking about alpha over here. So let's talk in general. We have our listeners also. So you talk about alpha females. And one thing I do want to talk about alpha, regardless as human beings, is that you want to lead the pack. You want to do everything. So from your perspective, tell us a bit about a difference between alpha females and alpha males.
Oh, Divya, I love that. Okay, so alpha females, I appreciate you saying that, because we do. I mean, we like to know where things end up. We're in control. So often we're in a conversation with somebody, but we're already processing and problem solving. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful, please do not get me wrong if you're listening to this. Like, it is a wonderful personality trait. I love the type A in me. She's the one who wrote the beautiful books, right? But the problem is, again, that is it's an unattainable way to, you just can't sustain that pace health wise, in relationship. Oftentimes as a woman, we even emasculate our man. We want our man to look a certain way. And I'm here to say that there's no freedom for that man to create and be who he's supposed to be. And maybe he just wants to take care of you, but we're so busy taking care of, everything that, we miss that moment for him. So I feel like it's a beautiful personality. It's just overdone. And so my whole goal is to inspire these type A women to learn to live in that alpha alchemy, which is that place of true balance where we have that type A, and we fire it up and we go into fight or flight, but then we like back off and we soften and we let things go and we let things unfold, including our children.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I want to touch upon something that you said, emasculate. And here's what I'm going to share that, both men and women are phenomenal in their own rights. Women
Absolutely.
bring strengths of their own, men bring strengths of their own. And if we can see each other as human beings rather than that, gender differences, and I'm not saying that the gap is not there. Myself being a woman, yes, gap is there, but what if we all came to the table to bridge the gap together, to bring our grace and strength and that quiet confidence, and not, as you talked about alpha females, is that having to be that extreme to establish your credibility or establish that you are that person in the room. What if we moved from that place to being an influencer leading by example, having that quiet strength that far outweighs that alpha? So, would love your thoughts on that.
I think one of the things I've learned in this unwinding of the mind and learning to come from a place of internal validation versus the external is you just naturally become inspiration, not information. You no longer have to say, here, this is how it needs to be done. It just, you are that example. You are that inspiration for the fourth grade student. It's like, yeah, I want to, I want to live healthy. I might want to be a yoga teacher. I might want to, be a speaker. I might want to fly to Mars. I mean, we just let them feel safe. There's just a natural safety in our presence once you can sort of live in that alchemy of the alpha. And just basically that is simply grounding that alpha energy, making sure that we are constantly slowing down intentionally slowing down and softening. And I think
Absolutely.
there's a lot, that's where love lives. When I teach kids in schools, I mean, I say, this space that we're creating right here, I mean, this is where you can have that compassion. You can, with your partner, you can be a little more loving, or you can let a comment go. It's like, oh, that wasn't very nice, but it's not gonna bug me today, and Divya, it is the recovering alpha female. It is not recovered. It is my journey. It is my lifelong journey.
I think so.
So
We
you're
all
gonna
have
love what
lifelong
mommy
journeys, Lindy. It's and that's the thing. We kind of like always think, "Oh gosh, when I reach there, that mountaintop, it's so great." But here's the thing: when you reach that mountaintop, you're going to see other peaks,
You
and
miss the huckleberries along the way. I
exactly,
mean,
exactly.
it's just like, and that's the thing. We can't, we just think there's this station. And I catch myself doing it when I'm spinning and thinking, oh, wait, I spent too much time in the garden. I need to, get in and do some, nuts and bolts and, get some projects done. And then I'm like, wait a minute, you almost, when you're going through this recovering, when you start to soften and you really, and again, each book has these ahas that are just a beautiful language for navigating the brain, for self acceptance. I call it radical self acceptance at all costs. Like, you just come from this place of love, and I promise, and I have seen it play out, people's lives just change around them. You as you change, people change. You don't change people; they change as you change. And what I have found is that this language that I use with myself has really helped me just learn to quiet the mind, and then that soul language has just kind of come forward. And
Hmm.
I live a very beautiful life that I have truly created. There's nothing conventional about it. In fact, my whole brand is let your color out and owning your quirks. I talk to, and I work with a lot of kids and young adults, that it's like, your quirks just make you colorful. Once you own it, then it's just a color. It's an aspect of yourself that is makes you
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of a story. So
oh, good.
I think so. This was with one of my kids, and so folks, as we talk about, we're all, you know, have America is a beautiful melting pot of people from coming from all different countries, colors, races. So I mentor, and so for me, it's not only my own kids are my own kids, but all my kids are my kids. So one of the kids, we were just kind of like sitting and having a conversation. There are a couple of other kids too. So one kid says that today everybody was, we had all gathered together, and they were asking, which country are you from and who are you? And so I said, I'm an American. And I said, that's great. And then he says, but then they kept on asking me, where am I from? And he said that, am I different from other people? So I said, okay, let's go to the garden. So fortunately, we had a lot of different colored flowers. We went there and I asked him, what do you see here? And he said, oh, there is pansies, there's a couple of marigolds, and there are a lot of different other flowers. And I said, why don't you go back to your classroom tomorrow? Or it was a camp, I don't remember exactly. It's been quite a few years. And then come back and tell me what you see there. So comes back and says, oh, it was like a garden. And so basically the thing is that when we talk about looking at people as different flowers, and when you talked about corks, if we were to see us as an expression of nature, that we are perfect as we come, we don't sit and question, why is marigold the way it is? Or why does rose look like the way it looks like? And it was just amazing that he went through that questions and whatever experiences that would have left a mark on him, just cruise through it. And when you talk about that having that, embracing your quirks and that radical acceptance, that's where it comes from, that we all are connected. So tell me about the time during your multiple sclerosis. How did that adversity move you through your life, and how did you move past through it?
The MS it's as so often people say, typically an illness.
Mhm.
I mean, it can truly be a gift. And for me, it really, it forced me to slow down. Of course, I didn't
Mhm.
right away. I boxed it up. I went right back into my corporate job. I had a really fun, at that time, corporate career selling commercial real estate for Jack Nicklaus. The golfer. It is Jack Nicklaus. Yeah. Anyway, I was selling corporate real estate, and so I just kind of took the medicine. I did everything the doctor said, and I put it on the shelf. And then the disease progressed. So after about 3 years of just pushing my body through this, it depleted itself yet again. And that is when I took kind of a hard right out of corporate America, as are many probably are faced with COVID right now and the way things have played out. Everybody's in a place that they need to reinvent and redesign. And so I basically had about I don't know, 6-month path of just what am I going to do? How am I going to, pay the bills? How am I going to support 3 children? How am I going to, put siding on my house at that time? I didn't even have siding. I didn't have any flowers. Imagine it rolled hard 20 years later. But, it takes time. And the garden became, part of my, my expression. I didn't but anyway, the MS was a gift. I did learn to slow down. I started with some yoga, and
Mhm.
in typical alpha fashion, it wasn't just one. At first, I'm like, yeah, a little slow for me. Thanks so much. I gotta run. So I remember I'm like in Shavasana. I'm like, thanks so much. I'm kind of rolling my mat up, and I kind of hand it to him. I'm like, thanks. Okay, we'll see you another time. Because it wasn't fast. Like I didn't even sweat. It was like calm, and I had to like lay there and just do nothing. And so I was completely in my head. And then again, here's the irony of the story is I after recognizing the beauty and the healing that started to happen in the body and in the mind, some of the beautiful clarity that was coming in that downtime, that quiet space. I ended up getting my 500 hours with yoga medicine, and I became a yoga medicine teacher. And then I teach yoga to students, and I teach a really nice restorative series to women out in our area in person, teach restorative. So yeah, I went down the alpha. I kind of alphaed up the yoga and started doing that. But it really did help me slow down, and it sort of was
Hmm.
this safety for me to just do nothing without judgment, self judgment. It's almost so much of this is self inflicted. The crazy making is really self inflicted in my case.
Right. No, that's beautiful. And when we would talk about using restorative yoga, how are you experiencing MS right now?
I have done incredibly well. So I've had it about 15 years and
Mm-hmm.
I've done very well with it. I was on a Western therapy initially. I took
Mm-hmm.
everything they said. Okay, I had the leg spasms, I had the incontinence,
Mm.
I had my right side lost a use. I have a total lost
Oh.
right leg, cognitive confusion. So of course, and so
Mm-hmm.
anxiety meds. I'm taking everything that they told me because
Mm.
I didn't understand that the body had such a beautiful healing ability. And
Mm-hmm.
and I started to just sort of discover this as I unwound my thoughts and like
Right.
the fear. I started just pulling the fear out of my world. And it was so beautiful to just watch the body follow the mind. I mean, as I started to unwind that, the body started to heal itself. I did stay and have been on a Western therapy. I've changed it a few different times. I've changed neurologists a few different times. Not that I don't think they're all brilliant, but I wanted to find one that, after I became a little more confident in my body's ability to heal itself, I changed it up, and I'd find a neurologist who might share that perspective with me. And so I would build like a little, sort of a wellness team that would
Mm-hmm.
help me on all different planes.
Absolutely. Going for the integrative medicine because now that has become extremely popular.
I just fortunately just started kind of pushing it through,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm certain, again, I think the Western medicine is brilliant. I think the doctors I have worked with over the years have been incredible. I'm
Right.
I'm grateful for the pharmaceuticals who invested the money to make sure that we had that, because I haven't been able to live in the alchemy of the alpha until truly, I mean, I've sort of pushed through the porthole probably 2 or 3 years ago. And now I do live mostly balanced. Of course, I have days I spin out and, have the deprecating thoughts again. But then
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, okay, wait, what do you need? Do you need a massage? I kind of go through my little checklist, not the
Sure.
get all this stuff done, but what do I need to put myself back in that grounded state?
Mm-hmm.
But
And
I think that is
that's
what's helped the MS.
right. And that's again, they say that it's one of the reasons why 92% or 96%, I don't have the exact numbers, do not achieve their goals versus only 8% of people achieve their goals. And one of the reasons is that it's not that situations are different in people's lives, it's about knowing how to cope with it. And the thing is, folks, doesn't matter who it is. From, I can guarantee you that from top to bottom, anybody, like, if you go from north to south, you'll probably not find a single person who doesn't have issues. Everybody's got some form or some issues, and we cannot compare. We cannot say that somebody's pain is less than somebody's pain. We don't know. We're not walking in their shoes. So, as you said about, it's about embracing what you get and moving through it. So, as you talk about it, and as the book started evolving, share with us about your books and like what are they about?
Well, each book I have truly lived. I mean, each of the ahas are hard won. So the
Hmm.
first, I still carry them around, and I color them up and I write in them and I put feathers and mark them and find special things. And basically the first book, I would say, if you had, it's this concept of sort of moving into grace. It's like learning, just starting to unwind the mind and be like, I'm going to be a little nicer to myself. I don't really know why. I think it really, there was a time, and I write about this in this book, like I was doing so much yoga after being a teacher, and it felt really good because I was getting income and people wanted me to teach their class. And I was like, ooh, good, I'm a good teacher. People like it. So I was getting my love cup filled, so to speak. Well, I was teaching so much that I ended up herniating a disc.
Oh.
And it knocked me on my back. I mean, I just knocked me flat.
Hmm.
And I remember, just, this is before I really started the whole books, but I remember it was so painful. And I was just, one day I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I like scowled at myself and I'm like, oh, you look like, well, the SHIT word, but I just look like, and then I kind of looked at a double take and I looked at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, would you be nice to her? She's so hurt right now. Like she can hardly walk in here. And so I like started having this whole third person dialogue that introduced this concept of being really kind to yourself. And that's what started the first book, is I like, look, I'll be that recovering alpha female and learn things like progress, not perfection. Woo-woo's not cuckoo. Who are they anyway? Like you were saying about the Joneses. Who are the Joneses? Okay. Who wants to keep up with them? How can you be your own colorful self when you do? So each of that book I put to bed. I thought, okay, I'm on, and I was doing great. And then I had more wisdom to live through. And so that became Inspiring Grace as an alcoholic, because once a type A, you're always going to be type A. And so I had to, instead of like run from that personality, want to be this like Zen master, I'm like, no, I'm going to be type A, and I'm going to be a voice piece to move the movement of this recovery, where people can soften and slow down, and we don't have to be everything to everybody all of the time, and we can celebrate our quirks. It's like, wow, that makes me kind of different, but that's all right. So that was that. And then the last one, really, I just hatched it during COVID, or at the end, like I'd written it. And that's why I say I've sort of pushed through the porthole of living in the alpha alchemy. And that's really living a life of grace as not a prayer, but as a daily choice. Because again, type A people, we have a very, very fast brain, and we have a lot of beautiful vision, and we can move things through, and we like to control it. But I am reminded all the time to try to I guess it's permission to slow down and soften and trust a force that's greater than us out there. So that's how the books all sort of unfolded. And I had a vision to write the 3 books. They explore a little dab of the woo-woo stuff that I was kind of like, yeah, no way, peace out, no thank you, And now, again, I do a lot of work with reciprocity of the earth. So I mean, I've gone completely the other way, but living that sort of alchemy of the alpha.
Absolutely. And it's about celebrating each and every one of us. Doesn't matter, folks, if you're alpha or A type, because this is not the message. The message is
it
that
really isn't.
the message is
Great
celebrate
point.
who you are. And as you are celebrating yourself, find that compassion and find that area of internal validation where you are showing up with grace for yourself. And as you show up with grace, you are complete within yourself. And here's the thing, folks, it doesn't matter what you are thinking. Define who you are, define what your definition of success is. Because if there's something that gives you pleasure and you're not sensing that internal stress, or that internal GPS is not telling you that you're on the wrong path, and that's your success. Who's anybody else to tell you what the definition of success is? So, as we wrap up, where can listeners meet you or can find you and connect with you?
Well, the books are on my website, so lindylewis.com. And then my Instagram is Let Your Color Out. So Let Your Color Out, and I try to do positive little posts each day. I sell some fun jewelry that has been pivotal, like my peace ring, to try to get people, when you've got your finger out there telling somebody what they should do, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So it's kind of that symbol to just, manage your own stuff. That's an aha that I wrote about in book 2. And just, slowly the change happens. It just happens. And it's a hard thing to say this was the moment, but if you start this journey and you start giving your permission to come from a place of reflection, not reaction, or progress, not perfection, all of this language that I use, just starting to sort of control the conversations in your head. If you need to do any controlling, just control those and shop your thoughts. Don't buy the first one that comes along, give yourself a minute. So lindylewis.com has everything. There's consulting on there. There's workbooks online. There's a lot of different variety. I do have a retreat out here. I have a beautiful garden where people can come. And if they want to really incubate and reinvent themselves, this is a container for that type of a process. They work with me one-on-one. And and they learn to reconnect with, their truth, because we abandon that when we're so busy defining ourselves by the external milestones that are presented.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, Lindy, and we wish you continued wonderful yogic and inspirational journey.
Thanks, Divya, very much. I appreciate you taking time and inviting me on your show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us. And until next time, be powerful and take care of yourself. And also, thank you, Rebel, for making the show possible. So, folks, absolutely take that time and connect with someone, as we talked about. Okay, take care. Bye for now.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.